For 6 long years, Clara Evans lived a life that didn't feel like her own. She was 24 when she answered a tiny newspaper ad that said, "Caregiver wanted, live-in, high compensation, discretion required." At the time, she was scrubbing dishes at a rundown diner in Brookhaven, the same diner her mother used to take her to before she passed. Clara's dream was simple. She wanted to open a bakery, a place that smelled like cinnamon and hope. But bakeries didn't come from dreams, they came from money, and money was something she never had. So she said yes to that ad. She thought she was stepping into a job. She didn't know she was stepping into a battlefield. The address led her to Silvergate Tower, the tallest building in the city. It was intimidating, a needle of glass piercing the sky. At the top floor lived Victor Hawthorne, once the golden boy of American finance, now a prisoner of his own body after a racing accident left him paralyzed. His sister Evelyn was the one who interviewed Clara, all sharp angles and pearls. She looked at Clara like she was inspecting a broken tool. "He's been through 12 caregivers in 2 years, Evelyn said flatly. They couldn't handle his moods. Clara, still smelling faintly of diner grease, met her gaze and said quietly, "I've handled worse." Evelyn smirked as if to say, "We'll see." The penthouse itself was breathtaking, floor-to-ceiling windows, priceless art furniture that had never been sat on. But to Clara, it felt less like a home and more like a mausoleum. At the center of it sat Victor, 32 but looking closer to 40, his dark hair unkempt, his eyes a piercing blue that could cut a person in half. He glared at her, his voice rough from disuse. "Another one. Did my dear sister tell you how long the others lasted? Or did she just flash a paycheck and hope you were desperate enough?" Clara held her ground. She said it wouldn't be easy. "I'm not expecting it to be." He gave a bitter laugh. "Not easy. That's the polite word for impossible. So what's your story? Running from something or just desperate?" Clara steadied her breath. "My name's Clara Evans. I'm here to do the job. I don't need pity, and I don't give it." He wasn't used to that. Most people flinched or worse, treated him with saccharine sympathy. Clara did neither. He tested her anyway. Within hours, he hurled a leather-bound book against the wall, inches from her head. Pages fluttered like wounded birds. Clara bent down, picked it up, smoothed the edges, set it back on the table. "That wasn't decent," she said calmly. "Please don't do it again." For the first time in years, Victor was silent. He hated her already because she didn't break. That first year was brutal. He mocked her clothes, her food, even the way she walked. He spilled water just to watch her clean it. He refused the meals she cooked and demanded new ones only to reject them too. But Clara never snapped. She cleaned up the water. She cooked again. She stayed steady, and in that steadiness was a quiet rebellion. Slowly, cracks began to form in his armor. It started on a rainy afternoon. He sat glaring at the bookshelf, frustrated he couldn't reach the top shelf. Without a word, Clara pulled down Treasure Island and placed it in his lap. "Didn't ask for this," he muttered. "I know," she replied, "but the forecast says rain all week." 2 days later, she found the book open on the table, a bookmark halfway through. That's how it always went. Small gestures, tiny cracks in the wall between them. Then came the nightmares. Violent thrashing memories of screeching tires and twisted metal. At first, he screamed at her to get out, but she didn't. She sat quietly until his breathing slowed. The next time, she brought a glass of water. By month 6, he let her sit in the corner until he fell asleep again. He never acknowledged it, but the insults grew duller afterward, as if her presence softened the edges of his pain. The true turning point came when Evelyn and her slick husband Richard stopped by. They talked over Victor like he was furniture, pity dripping off every word. Clara's jaw clenched, but she kept quiet. After they left, she went into the unused kitchen and baked cookies from memory, her mother's recipe. The scent of cinnamon filled the sterile air. She left them by his chair. Hours later, the plate was empty. From then on, the penthouse smelled of muffins, scones, little rebellions of warmth. He never thanked her, but he always ate. 2 years in a new character, entered Dr. Lang, a physical therapist built like a linebacker. He was blunt. "Walking again. 1 in a million chance. It'll hurt like hell. Want to try?" Victor hesitated, but Clara's quiet presence tipped the scales. So began the war. Harnesses, electrodes, a treadmill that mocked him with every failed step. He cursed, he cried, he quit over and over. And every time Clara stood by him, 5 more minutes, she'd say softly. You did 10 yesterday. You can do 15 today. He roared, I can't. She met his fury with steady eyes. Yes, you can. I'll be right here. Somehow her belief made him endure. Years blurred into sweat and agony, and then the miracle tiny twitches in his legs. A flicker of movement. By year 5, he stood shakily between parallel bars. Clara's hand hovered near his back, whispering, You've got this. He staggered, sweat dripping, but he did it. Each step was a victory they shared. But as Victor's body grew stronger, so did the old shadows of his past. Evelyn and Richard returned more often, their fake smiles sharper. They whispered that Clara was too close, that people might see her as a liability, a distraction. Victor's phone rang constantly. Now board members, lawyers, meetings. The office door, once always open, was now shut. And Clara, she was fading into the background of a life she had rebuilt with her own hands. The betrayal came crashing down on the night of his grand gala. For weeks he had practiced in secret, determined to reveal his recovery with a flourish. That night, in a ballroom glittering with chandeliers and champagne, he stepped across the marble floor alone, unassisted. Clara's heart swelled with tears of pride. She wanted to run to him, to hold him, to remind him this was their victory. But when he turned to her, his face was cold. No need to be sentimental, he said flatly. This was always the goal. The words gutted her, and worse was yet to come. When she overheard Evelyn and Richard plotting to have him declared incompetent, she rushed into the gala, desperate to warn him. She shouted across the room, They're plotting against you. They want to steal everything. The crowd gasped. Cameras flashed. Victor looked down at her with glacial eyes and said, I have no idea who this woman is. Remove her. The guards dragged her out as the elite whispered behind their glasses of champagne. 6 years of sacrifice erased in 6 words. Clara collapsed on the sidewalk outside, her heart shattered. But the story didn't end there. Inside that ballroom, just as Evelyn and Richard raised their glasses in victory, the giant screen behind Victor flickered to life. Hidden recordings filled the room. Evelyn's voice, Richard's conspiratorial laughter, their entire scheme laid bare. Gasps turned into outrage as Victor's voice thundered, not bitter, but righteous. He revealed he had known for months, had endured their games, even pushed Clara away, all to trap them. Pushing her out, he admitted to the stunned crowd, was the hardest thing I've ever done. And I will spend the rest of my life hoping she can forgive me. Police entered, escorting his sister and her husband out in disgrace. But Victor didn't stay for applause. He walked, still unsteady, cane in hand, straight out of the gala. His destination wasn't the boardroom. It was the diner. The bell above the door jingled. Clara sat in a booth nursing a cold cup of tea, her eyes hollow. When she saw him dressed in a tuxedo that looked absurd in a greasy spoon, she snapped, What do you want? Come to make sure the disturbed woman hasn't caused any more trouble. He flinched. I deserve that, he whispered. I deserve more. But Clara, everything I said, everything I did, it was a lie I had to tell. They would have destroyed you if they knew how much you meant to me. He slid a set of keys and a legal deed across the table. She looked down, confused. Her name was on the paper. It was the storefront next door, newly renovated. For your bakery, he said softly. I bought it months ago. It was the only way I could believe there would be an after all of this. I couldn't lose you without giving you something real. Tears blurred her vision. All those nights, all those sacrifices, and here was the proof it hadn't been for nothing. He hadn't erased her. He had listened. He had remembered her dream when even she had given up on it. She reached across the table, finally taking his hand. In that small diner, surrounded by the smell of burnt coffee and possibility 2 broken lives began to mend. So here's the question I'll leave with you. Was Victor justified in publicly breaking her heart to bring down the people plotting against him? Or was that betrayal too deep to ever forgive? What would you have done in Clara's place? walk away forever, or take the hand of the man who hurt you to save you? Drop your thoughts in the comments, share this story with someone who believes in second chances, and don't forget to subscribe for more tales that remind us sometimes the richest thing you can give isn't money. It's loyalty and the courage to fight for love.